Hello, third graders. This week we are going to be getting our garden kits out and working on our flower borders for our park design. So if you have this worksheet, you can go ahead and get it out. We're also going to be talking a little bit about flowers, okay? Until you have them in your garden kit, okay? You have a couple dried flowers. And we're going to be talking about inherited traits. And so inherited traits are really cool. They are traits that get passed down from parents to children, and that's animals, plants, you name it. Chances are you have inherited traits, right? Your eye color, or your ear, or your hair color. There's all sorts of inherited traits that get passed down from parents to children. And the same is true for plants. So we're going to learn a little bit about Gregor Mendel and his studies about inheritance in plants. He used the pea plant. So you can see these are pea flowers here. Okay, and so he was one of the first scientists to figure out how traits are passed down. And so this is a very cool book, and it's going to apply to our flower lesson that we're going to learn about today. So let's go ahead and get started. So for today, you're going to go ahead and get out the flower borders sheet. Okay, have that out. And then if you want, out of your garden kit, you can go ahead and take out, chances are there are some pressed flowers, okay, in there that I included. You can get these out to reference, to look at. Okay, we're going to be paying attention to the petal color, the center color. Normally we look at the stems. Of course, these don't have stems, right, because it's harder to press, but all that stuff. So have these out as a reference that we can use while we read the story and talk about inherited traits. All right, so next up what we're going to do is we're going to read Gregor Mendel, The Friar Who Grew Peas, okay, and learn a little bit about inherited traits. All right, so today we are going to read Gregor Mendel, The Friar Who Grew Peas, and we're going to be learning a little bit about how plants and animals pass down traits. And these are everywhere out in the world, and you'll be able to see some of the traits that your parents pass to you as well. Okay, it exists in both plants and animals, but specifically, Mr. Mendel learned about the pea plant. All right. Hopefully you all can see. I'll focus it a little bit better. Perfect. All his life, Gregor Mendel hungered for knowledge. Born in 1822 in a country that is now called the Czech Republic, Gregor grew up in a village with 71 houses, 479 people, 41 horses, and 98 cows. His father was a hardworking farmer who hoped his only son would follow in his footsteps. Over time, the people of Gregor's village had learned that growing two kinds of apple trees together could produce better fruit, and that breeding two kinds of sheep together could yield thicker wool. Gregor longed to know why, how. He yearned to unlock nature's secrets and share them with everyone. Gregor wanted more knowledge than his village grammar school could provide. The next level of school was half a day's journey away. To attend, he would have to eat and sleep there. His parents scraped together every cent they could, but they could only afford to pay for classes, a bed, and half of Gregor's meals. 12-year-old Gregor went anyway. He chose to feed his mind and go without food to fill his grumbling belly. At school, he feasted on his lessons. Tragically, in 1838, Gregor's father broke his back and could no longer till his fields. Gregor later wrote an essay on his life. The scholar, then 16 years of age, was unfortunately compelled to fend for himself. Enterprising Gregor worked as a tutor and paid his own way through 4 more years of school. Even when he was sick, Gregor never fell behind in his lessons. As he neared graduation, he worried that he could not find enough tutoring jobs to put food on the table next to his books. He feared that his growling stomach at last would halt his studies. It had become impossible to continue such strenuous exertions, he wrote. I needed to be spared perpetual anxiety about the means of livelihood. Gregor's problems were solved when he became a friar, which is similar to a priest. At the Abbey of St. Thomas, in a town called Brno, Gregor could feed his body, mind, and soul. His fellow friars preached sermons, cared for the sick, taught school, and were respected community leaders. They were also mathematicians, botanists, philosophers, and geologists. They studied in a library where 30,000 books lined the walls. They discussed ideas over 3 plentiful meals each day. Surrounded by great thinkers, Gregor plunged into further studies. He became addicted to nature, he later wrote. I would shrink from no exertions which might help me to fill the gaps in my information. The abbot, the head of the abbey, rewarded Gregor's zeal. He sent the young friar to the University of Vienna to study with some of the world's best scientists. There, Gregor learned that all of nature's miracles can be explained by a few simple rules called universal laws. Universal laws explain that some things will always act in the same way, even in different settings. For example, the universal law of gravity tells us how things move through space, explaining why an apple will always fall towards Earth, whether it's dropped from a tree or the tallest church spire. Gregor learned how to test such laws with carefully planned experiments. When Gregor returned to the abbey, the abbot asked him to teach science at a nearby school. Students liked Gregor's clear explanations and lively sense of humor. He could make any intellectual food nutritious and tasty, a student once said. Gregor liked nourishing young minds, but he still hungered to make a great discovery for himself. He focused his attention on one of the hottest scientific questions of his time. How do mothers and fathers, whether they are apple trees, sheep, or humans, pass down traits to their children? In Gregor's day, no one knew why a child might have her father's blue eyes and straight hair, while her brother might have their mother's brown eyes and curly hair. Features such as brown eyes and curly hair are called traits. Gregor believed that all plants and animals pass down traits from parents to children in the same way. By finding a pattern for how this occurs in one life form, he hoped to crack the code for all living things. Gregor read how earlier scientists had paired different species or kinds of plants to see what their offspring or children would be like. The offspring of such matches are called hybrids. By pairing different types of corn, flowers, and wheat, earlier scientists bred many hybrids, but studied only a few of them. Gregor had something else in mind. He would breed thousands of offspring from just a few pairings. He would count how often specific traits appeared. He would then see if math could help him find a pattern. If it all went well, he would have a universal law that could apply to all living things. So you can see this is a flower example. This is a lily. So this plant family tree shows the outcome when 2 different plants pass on traits such as color to a hybrid offspring. So it is an orange flower and a yellow flower, and they create a child that has both colors in it. That's a hybrid. Gregor knew that he must choose the plants for his experiments carefully. He studied 34 kinds of peas in his garden. At first, the plants looked so different that Gregor wondered how he would ever decide which specific traits to track. He looked more closely and noticed that all of the peas, which are pea plant seeds, were either yellow or green. Gregor liked these traits because they were clearly distinct. Similarly, some of the peas were smooth and some were wrinkled. Gregor picked 7 pairs of contrasting traits, such as these, to test his experiment. He planned to breed each pair and record how often each trait appeared in their offspring. So you can see this one is green with smooth peas, yellow with smooth peas, yellow with wrinkly peas, and green with wrinkly peas. Before beginning the test, Gregor grew his plants again and again to be sure that each kind of pea always produced an offspring with the same trait. He wanted to be sure that any changes in the offspring were caused by his experiment. After 2 years of preparation, Gregor was eager to start breeding his plants to make hybrids. He knew that pea plants usually form seeds when pollen from one part of the flower fertilizes egg cells from another part of the same flower. To create his hybrids, he would need to meddle with nature's process. In the spring, Gregor used tweezers to peel open the inner petals of a flower on a yellow pea plant. He snipped away the flower's stamen so that it could no longer make pollen, and then he brushed the egg cells in that same flower's pistil with the pollen from the green plant. When he was done, he tied a tiny sack around the flower to prevent another plant's pollen from drifting in on a breeze or the legs of a bee or a butterfly. This way, he was positive that no other plant had pollinated that flower. Step by step, Gregor pollinated 287 flowers by hand, working his way through the 7 pairs of traits: smooth peas and wrinkled peas, yellow pea pods and green pea pods, smooth pea pods and bumpy ones, and so on and so forth. His fingers moved carefully, as a mistake might spoil his results. Then Gregor waited. He would not remove the sacks until the flowers had been replaced by pea pods filled with seeds. He nurtured the plants, and he joked they were his children. Fall finally came, and Gregor eagerly split open the newly ripened pea pods. And what did he find? So you can see here, he's writing on them, okay, once they've been done, so that nothing else can kind of meddle with his results. The yellow pea plants bred with green pea plants had yielded all yellow peas. When he bred smooth peas with wrinkled peas, he got all smooth peas. Gregor observed that in each of the 7 pairs of traits, all of the hybrid children looked like just one of the parents. Were the lost traits gone forever? What would the grandchildren and great-grandchildren look like? Gregor pondered these questions throughout the snowy winter. Come spring, he planted the seeds of the hybrids that he had bred, and this time he allowed nature to take its course, and he let the flowers fertilize themselves. He waited, and he watched. At harvest time, once again, Gregor split open the ripened pods. He discovered yellow peas and green peas sitting side by side in the same pod. He also found wrinkled peas beside smooth peas. The missing traits had reappeared. Gregor planted this new generation of seeds and waited and watched again. When he harvested this crop, Gregor found that all of the plants grown from the green peas sprouted pods that were filled with only green peas. Some of the plants grown from yellow peas sprouted pods with only yellow peas. But most of the plants grown from yellow peas sprouted pods with both yellow and green peas. Gregor planted the seeds 4 more times. In each of the different pairings, he achieved the same results. He had discovered a pattern. Gregor's results reminded him of the math that he had studied at the university. Sometimes numbers create patterns just like the ones found in the peas. If the pea traits followed the same rules and numbers, then each trait must be made up of 2 separate parts that mix and match to create a pattern. Suddenly, Gregor was seeing heredity, how parents pass traits down to their children in an entirely new way. He concluded that every pea plant has 2 building blocks necessary to create any one trait. Today, these blocks are called genes. For every trait, the mother and father plants each give 1 gene to their child. So here you go. This is kind of an example. Gregor observed that 1 trait disappeared in the first generation of hybrids, but showed up again in later generations. So the yellow and the green pea produced the first generation all yellow. Second generation, there's 1 green. And then the third generation, we have these combinations. We have an all yellow, an all green, and then these 2, which are majority yellow with 1 green. Now Gregor knew why the pea plants he had grown at the start of his experiment had always produced children exactly like themselves. The yellow pea plants had only 1 yellow pea gene to give to their children. No, had only yellow pea genes to give to their children, right? So there's 2 of them. They're both yellow. Why? Okay. When Gregor crossed the yellow peas with the green peas, each hybrid plant had 1 yellow pea gene and 1 green pea gene. In the first generation of hybrid plants, all the peas were yellow because the yellow gene hid the green gene from view. But the green pea genes were still there to be passed down. Gregor called this gene that masked other genes dominant, and the genes that were hidden recessive. He found that recessive genes are just as likely as dominant genes to be passed on to children, and whenever a recessive gene meets with another recessive gene, it surfaces for the world to see. This explains why the green peas and other lost traits showed up again in later generations of Gregor's experiment. Gregor also discovered that traits act independently. Being green in color does not make peas any more likely to be wrinkled or smooth in shape. Over 8 years, Gregor grew close to 28,000 pea plants. That's a lot of pea plants. He also tested his theory in smaller trials on 14 other kinds of plants. Gregor's hunger for knowledge had led to a great discovery. It was time to tell the world. So you can see here, so these all have 2 Ys, right, for yellow. These all have 2 greens for green. So the yellow is dominant. So this pea plant has 1 yellow and 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 green. Okay, and so then when it gets passed down again, it has 1 pea that's yellow, yellow, 1 pea that's yellow, green, and yellow will always be the dominant. So if it has 1 yellow and 1 green, it's going to show as yellow. 1 yellow, 1 green, it's going to show as yellow. And then this one got 2 greens passed down, so it's green. Okay, and so on and so forth. In 1865, Gregor presented his findings to the Brno Natural History Society. A year later, he published them in a scientific journal. No one paid any attention. No one understood that his discovery was about much more than peas. They could not connect the pea experiments with apple trees, sheep, or people. Also, genes were too tiny to be seen by the microscopes available in Gregor's day. Without more evidence that genes really existed, how could people believe in something they couldn't see? Gregor lost his appetite for plant experiments. He had recently been elected abbot, and new duties absorbed his time. However, he did not surrender his faith in his theory. He told friends, "My time will come." In 1884, after a long illness, Gregor died at the age of 63. The entire town mourned the passing of a beloved teacher and community leader. In 1900, 3 different scientists in 3 different countries stumbled onto the paper that Gregor had published in 1865. Each was on the verge of repeating Gregor's discovery. Each was stunned at the foresight of this unknown friar. Although he received no glory during his lifetime, Gregor is now known as the first geneticist. His discoveries are called Mendel's laws. Today, we use genetics to prevent and cure diseases, make crops hardier, solve crimes, and even learn more about nature's ways. More than a century after his death, Gregor's discoveries continue to fuel new insights about the world. The dream that he had written about as a youth has come true. May the might of destiny grant me the supreme ecstasy of earthly joy, the highest goal of earthly ecstasy, that of seeing, when I arise from the tomb, my art thriving peacefully among those who are to come after me. So I'm sure he had no idea of the science that would be based on this theory going forward and how important it truly was. And it's unfortunate he didn't get to see that in his time. A lot of great scientists never get to see the fruition of some of the things that they hypothesize or come up with. All right, so that was Gregor Mendel, the friar who grew peas. So hopefully when you guys are out and about and looking at flowers, peas, you name it, even yourselves, right? Your eye color. Blue eyes are recessive. So chances are, okay, even if your parents don't have blue eyes, they pass down that recessive gene that maybe it wasn't visible in their eye color, but they pass it on to you and you have a recessive trait that is visible. So start thinking about all the different traits that parents pass down, whether it's animals, whether it's people, plants. It's very cool to be thinking about all that good stuff as you look around the world. All right, so next up for our park, we are thinking about the flower borders in our park. And you have been given 2 parent plants for your flower borders. All right, so parent 1, okay, has some traits, and parent 2 has some traits. So now your gardener of the park has offered to breed them to create an offspring that will encompass the traits of the parents that are combined and unique. So you're going to find the traits that your flower has inherited and place them in the boxes below. You will have a new flower that has inherited the traits from the parents, so parent 1 and parent 2. And you're going to color in the child flower on the right with the traits that were passed down from the parent flowers. So now, if you look in the grand scheme of things, like with Gregor Mendel, right, there are recessive traits and there are dominant traits. We're going to just go ahead and call it, this is going to be a hybrid, and we're going to combine it to have both traits. Okay, so we won't know which one's recessive, but we're going to think about when we're looking at our flowers, okay, if you have your flower out from your garden kit, oops, this one flew away. You're going to look at what are some of the traits that a flower has that could be passed down from the adult flower. Okay, so be thinking about that. What are some of the traits that flowers have? All right. And we're going to kind of look at the parent plant. And this is going to tell us some of the traits that we have. And so you can use any color pen right now that you want. And you're going to fill in these boxes. Okay, what are 4 inherited traits that flowers might have? Okay, and again, you can use this parent to reference kind of. The first one is the color petals, right? So we're going to write petals. So flowers inherit the color of their petals. You can have the same flower type, but they can come in different colors, right? Tulips. There are all sorts of different tulips out there. Pink, purple, white, yellow, orange, you name it. Okay, so petal color is one. And then the center of that flower, okay, that's another inherited trait, the color of the center. Another one, okay, that again, you can't see on your dried flowers because we don't have it, is going to be the stem, right? The stem, the color of the stem is an inherited trait. And then last, the color of the leaves. Okay, perfect. And then if you have some markers, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and color the parents. So you can see I kind of colored this one. This has orange petals. It has a yellow center. Okay, and I just did a little bit of coloring to kind of speed it up. But you can keep going and color the whole thing if you so choose. It's your drawing to do. Okay, this one has the orange petals. This one has dark green leaves and a dark green 3-inch stem. So the diameter of the stem also comes into play. Parent 2 has purple petals, a brown center, light green leaves, and a light green 4-inch stem. Okay, so if we were looking at the hybrid from this, what color might it be? What color would the petals be? If you had 2 parents, right, that have orange petals and purple petals, what color might you end up with? You're going to end up with both, right? And whether that looks like some orange petals and then some purple petals, it might look like that example, remember in our Gregor Mendel book with the lily that was in there? Let's see if I can find that picture because that was a good example. And it was a flower, which is really helpful too. Here we go. Okay, remember when we looked at this example? It had yellow and then kind of that orange inside on that leaf. So that is very cool too. So you can do it however you wanted because we don't really know sometimes what nature might give us. So I'm going to alternate petals because that's kind of what I'm doing right now and it's easier for me to do. It doesn't have to be every other. So you're going to kind of color in this child. Okay, so it's got some orange petals and some purple petals from both parents. Okay. And I'm just having them alternate the petals. Or every 3 or purple. You can kind of do whatever you'd like to do. Okay. But so you'll just keep coloring it. You can color in the whole flower if you so choose. Okay. Again, if you kind of want to have it so that it's like a purple outline with an orange center, you can do that too. So kind of like these 3 down here. So see, you have outline in purple, and then maybe it's got an orange middle to the petal. Okay, that would work as well. So it's totally up to you. These are your flowers to create. You're going to create your own flowers for your park border. Okay, so now the other thing that the parents pass down is the center. So this one, parent 1 has a yellow center, and this one, parent 2 has a brown center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say it is a yellow center with brown dots kind of in it. Okay, it is a combination of both. Again, we're not dealing with the recessive and dominant, we're just putting them both together, making kind of that hybrid. There we go. So I've combined those. Now the leaves, we are combining a dark green leaf with a light green leaf. So I'm going to have kind of the outside of the leaf be that light green from parent 2, and the inside is going to be the dark green from parent 1. Okay, so I've got kind of my light green outline. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in that dark green. Perfect. So now it is a hybrid of the 2 parents. And then last step is a light green stem and a dark green stem. So same thing. Just going to go ahead and do the outline there. And we are combining both of them. Perfect. And now you have your child that you're going to use in your park, around your flower borders of your park. Okay? Awesome. Perfect. Nice job, you guys. All right, so you guys have gone ahead and we've learned a little bit about traits in plants and how they are inherited. You learned a little bit about one of the first key botanists to work on inheritance, Mr. Mendel, okay, and his peas. So maybe you'll look at peas a little differently going forward. You've also designed your very cool hybrid flower, okay, for your park borders. And then with these ones, these beautiful pressed dried flowers, you can go ahead, these are yours to use now if you want to make a nice card for a neighbor or a friend or an adult. Mother's Day is coming up. You can use them to make a nice little card. Okay, these are yours. You can glue them to the front of the card. All right, they're yours to use in their arts and craft project. We don't need to use them again. So get creative. Cards are great. Mother's Day is coming up. Okay, or you can have a friendly happy spring card. These will work great for that. You can use them for whatever you'd like. All right. Okay, very cool, you guys. I will see you next time. Next time we are going to talk about, what are we talking about next time? Oh, I think we're going to be talking about the tree groves in your park. And we're going to be dissecting pine cones and talking about designing a nice forest section for your park. So think about, as you're out and about, think about really cool parks that have kind of these tree groves that you can walk through. Lincoln Park is a good one here in West Seattle that I'm thinking about, right? When you walk through it, it's almost like you're in the woods. It's a cool feeling, right? Because they're nice, tall trees. So be thinking about some cool things like that that you like to be able to walk through in different parks around your home, okay? Or that you've visited in different places. All right, I will see you guys next time. Have a good afternoon.